Among the various causes of polyuria, diabetes mellitus is the most common thing which produces large quantities of urine. The mechanism of polyuria in diabetes mellitus is due to solute diuresis. The excess solute there being the glucose which is not utilized by the cells and excreted in the urine. So, along with the excess glucose, water will follow and produces what is called polyuria of diabetes mellitus. Of course, diabetes insipidus is a less common condition, but nonetheless a very important condition which we need to know as far as the differential diagnosis of polyuria is concerned. Diabetes insipidus refers to an abnormal state of water diuresis. This is not osmotic diuresis. This is an abnormal state of water diuresis. The excess urine produced is because of water not being conserved by the kidney. Not that there is an increase in the solute in the urine, but there is a water diuresis. Diabetes insipidus can be an early sign of a serious underlying disease. For example, a brain tumor in the posterior pituitary, or a craniopharyngioma, or meningitis, or head injury, things like that. An abrupt onset of polyuria in a patient who prefers extremely cold or iced water should arouse the suspicion that it could be central diabetes insipidus or CDI. Diagnosis of diabetes insipidus is often missed, sometimes for many years, until finally the polyuria is properly analyzed and the diagnosis is made. Remember, diabetes insipidus is not a very common condition, but it could be a very serious condition if not properly diagnosed and treated. Diabetes insipidus has four main types, namely the central diabetes insipidus, nephrogenic diabetes insipidus, dipsogenic diabetes insipidus, and gestogenic diabetes insipidus. CDI, NDI, polydipsogenic diabetes insipidus, PDDI, and GDI or gestogenic diabetes insipidus. We will consider each one of them separately in the succeeding slides. As mentioned in the previous slide, there are four main types of diabetes insipidus. Out of them, two are very important to note. The first one is the central diabetes insipidus, also known as the neurogenic diabetes insipidus. The mechanism of diabetes insipidus in this particular condition is due to a deficiency or absence of antidiuretic hormone, otherwise known as arginine vasopressin AVP. The causes are many. We will consider the causes in the next slide. The second type of diabetes insipidus is NDI or nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. Here, the ADH is secreted in normal quantities by the pituitary, but the target organ, the kidney tubules, are not responsive to the ADH. Due to some inherent reason in the kidney itself, or due to other diseases which make the tubules non-responsive to the presence of ADH, thus causing polyuria. So, the pituitary is not at fault, but the responsiveness of the target organ, the kidney, particularly the collecting ducts of the kidney, are at fault in nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. Then of course, the less common conditions we have got the primary polydipsic diabetes insipidus. It is because the ADH is suppressed in this particular case by excessive fluid intake. The person takes more and more quantities of fluid every day, and the excess fluid makes the plasma volume very much large and the plasma osmolality is very low. Because of that, the secretion of ADH by a feedback inhibition of the hypothalamus is suppressed. The causes of primary polydipsic DI or PDDI, PPDI, or dipsogenic diabetes insipidus, or psychogenic diabetes insipidus, or iatrogenic diabetes insipidus. In the iatrogenic diabetes insipidus, due to false belief, some people are advised or they themselves take large quantities of water, saying that it is very good for health. With the result that the plasma volume is more, osmolality is reduced, ADH is suppressed, polyuria is produced. And of course, the final category of diabetes insipidus here listed is the gestogenic diabetes insipidus. This is not a very common condition, but nonetheless it is important for us to know about the gestogenic diabetes insipidus. In some pregnant women during pregnancy, placenta produces an enzyme called vasopressinase. This vasopressinase, or a group of enzymes called vasopressinases, they will be destroying the ADH that is produced by the pituitary. So much so the ADH is not available for action in the kidney, and this produces polyuria. So, in nutshell, these are the 4 different types of diabetes insipidus: central diabetes insipidus, nephrogenic diabetes insipidus, primary polydipsic diabetes insipidus, and gestogenic diabetes insipidus. Now, let us consider central diabetes insipidus or CDI to a little more extent. We have already said that central diabetes insipidus is due to the neurohypophyseal causes or pituitary cause, where there is a decreased production of the ADH or non-production of the ADH or vasopressin from the pituitary. What are the neurogenic causes of central diabetes insipidus? Acquired causes and inherited causes, idiopathic. So, among the acquired causes, we have brain tumors, craniopharyngiomas, chromophobadenomas, posterior pituitary tumors, head trauma, granular metastases of the brain, autoimmune disorders, and many others. These are some of the common ones. Then, the inherited type of neurogenic or central diabetes insipidus CDI is due to genetic mutation of vasopressin gene. The mutations can be autosomal dominant mutation, autosomal recessive mutation, or X-linked recessive mutation. All 3 are reported, and because there is a genetic mutation, the vasopressin gene is not expressed properly. With the result, the pituitary or posterior pituitary is not able to secrete the ADH in normal quantities. It may be deficient or may be totally absent, depending upon the genetic expression of the mutation. And of course, the idiopathic variety of central diabetes insipidus, in spite of thorough search, there could be no cause, but the levels of ADH that are coming from the posterior pituitary are very low or absent in these individuals. As we have already learned, in CDI there is a lack of production or secretion of arginine vasopressin or the antidiuretic hormone. This may be partial or complete. In these patients, usually the urine volume is very high, of the order of around 8 to 10 liters per day. Imagine a normal human being passing around 1.5 liters of urine has to urinate 4 to 5 times a day. If the urine volume is around 10 liters per day, and if the bladder capacity is 250 ml normally, 10 liters of urine makes him void 40 times in 24 hours. During night time he may not void more. So, during daytime every 15 minutes the bladder is full. Imagine the fate of such an individual. A very troublesome affair to have polyuria of the order of 8 to 10 liters. And consequently, because of high turnout of water in the urine, there will be tremendous amount of polydipsia, and he has to take water every 10-15 minutes, around 250 ml or 300 ml of water. So that's also a very troublesome feature. The polyuria and polydipsia are very severe in central diabetes insipidus, unlike in nephrogenic diabetes insipidus or PPDI or GDI. Any disturbance or injury to the region of the hypothalamus or the posterior pituitary is a potential cause. The causes could be, as we have already seen in the previous slide, idiopathic, traumas, neoplasia, cysts, inflammation of the hypothalamic nuclei involving the ADH production or the posterior pituitary or the pituitary foci itself. So, remember, any patient with large polyuria of more than 6 to 7 or 8 liters is a possible candidate of central diabetes insipidus. Associated polydipsia is a very troublesome feature. We have seen in the previous slides that there will be receptors for the arginine vasopressin on the principal cells, on the outer aspect of the principal cells of the collecting ducts. There are two types of receptors for AVP, the V1 receptors and the V2 receptors. The V2 receptors play a dominant role in making the AVP get attached to the cell surface and trigger the cyclic AMP pathway, as we have seen earlier. Now, this V2 receptor is a protein which is comprised of 371 amino acids. As you can see, this is the NH2 terminal of that protein and this is the carboxylic terminal of that protein. This protein is folded across the cell membrane. This is the cell membrane of the principal cell of the collecting duct, and this is the folded protein that you can see. It moves in and out of the cell, and the receptor is structured like this. These red dots here that we see are the points where mutations can occur in the V2 receptor protein, which result in different genetic disorders of V2 receptor protein and thereby producing non-responsiveness of the V2 receptor for the AVP. So, this results in nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. So, there is arginine vasopressin secreted normally from the pituitary, but the V2 receptor protein is so modified, so mutated in some form or the other, that it is not able to accept the AVP into the receptor site and trigger the next sequence of events to exteriorize the aquaporin 2 channels onto the inner side of the luminal side of the tubular cell. So, this is a very important concept, and already around 180 mutations of this receptor protein have been documented. This diagram is taken from Journal of American Society of Nephrology. Nephrogenic diabetes insipidus or NDI. NDI may be congenital or acquired. In the previous slide, we have seen the AVP protein or V2 receptor protein. Vasopressin receptor protein mutations cause the congenital forms of NDI. To date, 180 plus mutations are already documented, as we have shown you in the previous slide, at various point mutations on the AVP receptor protein. In the chromosome region XQ28, these mutations occur. These mutations result in protein misfolding. Across the cell membrane, we have seen the AVP receptor protein is folded, and if there is a misfolding of the receptor protein, it cannot attach to the molecule of arginine vasopressin coming from the pituitary. So, the collecting duct cells will become irresponsive or non-responsive to the AVP secreted from the pituitary. Once the receptor is not able to pick up the AVP coming from the pituitary, then the aquaporin channels are not translocated to the basolateral membrane of the collecting ducts. The aquaporin 2 channels are inside, they are within the cell as vesicles. Due to the stimulus of the receptor binding on the outer side of the basolateral membrane cells of the collecting duct, signals via cyclic AMP go and extend and then translocate the particular vesicle of the aquaporin channel to the luminal side of the principal cells of the collecting duct. So, this particular translocation does not occur unless there is a receptor attachment of the AVP. But receptor attachment itself could be defective because of the protein misfolding. Protein misfolding occurs because of chromosomal defect. The chromosomal defect is due to point mutation of the AVP receptor protein. Remember, 90% of the cases of nephrogenic diabetes insipidus, the cause is genetic. There is some genetic mutation. Unlike CDI, in central diabetes insipidus, the genetic causes they account only 10 to 15%. The remaining 80 to 85% of the cases are due to other causes within the brain, either inflammatory or traumatic or neoplastic or autoimmune or granulomatous diseases. But the genetic causes are only 10 to 15%. Here it is just the reverse. Nephrogenic diabetes insipidus, 90% of the cases are due to a genetic mutation, particularly a point mutation of the V2 receptor protein or vasopressin receptor protein mutation. 100% of the out of the 100% of the cases, 10% only are acquired, which we will see the acquired causes of NDI in the next slide. We have considered the genetic mutations causing NDI in 90% of the patients. The remaining 10% of cases of NDI are due to acquired causes. The acquired causes could be hypokalemia and hypercalcemia. In both these conditions, the low potassium and the high calcium will act on the renal collecting ducts and suppress the receptor function there and will not allow the AVP to act properly on the receptor site. Bilateral urinary tract obstruction will produce back pressure in the collecting ducts, and this back pressure will also lead to NDI by malfunction of the receptor site. Lithium therapy, acute renal failure, advanced CRF or chronic renal failure. These are some of the other acquired causes of NDI. One point about lithium therapy, lithium is used for depression, treatment of depression, and depression itself can produce psychogenic polydipsia, and lithium itself can produce NDI. So, in patients who are depressed and who are taking lithium, is it NDI or is it dipsogenic diabetes insipidus due to psychogenic cause? We have to clearly differentiate. Remember, the polyuria in a case of CDI is very severe, of the order of 8 to 10 liters per day or even more, whereas the polyuria of acquired NDI is of a moderate degree of around 3 to 4 liters per 24 hours. So, they will be just looking normal in terms of their urine output. Unless you properly measure the 24-hour urine, we will not be able to pick these patients, and it will be just double or slightly more than double the normal urine output. So, these are the few causes of acquired NDI that we can discuss here. We have learned that 90% of the cases of nephrogenic diabetes insipidus are congenital or due to genetic mutations, which means the patients are going to suffer from the condition from very early childhood. So, NDI most commonly occurs at birth. There will be urinary frequency, nocturia, enuresis, frequent and constant thirst. Suspect NDI. How to measure the 24-hour urine in an young infant or a child who is not toilet trained? There will be inconsolable crying, unusually wet diapers. There is a frequent need to give milk and nursing. The skin is dry with cool extremities and there is failure to thrive. These are certain features which should excite the possibility of NDI in a child. There will be excessive thirst and polyuria. The child may not be able to verbalize. So, in such an individuals, when we are not able to measure the 24-hour urine volume, we can go by the 24-hour fluid intake. Normally, the 24-hour fluid intake should be less than 100 ml per kilogram body weight. If the child or the infant is demanding more fluids than this volume, let us say the child is around 5 kilograms and 100 ml per kilogram body weight of water, that means 100 into 5, more than 500 ml of water. If the child is had to be fed in a day, then we can consider that to investigate that patient for NDI. So, we had a look at the central diabetes insipidus, nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. Now, we will see the polydipsic diabetes insipidus. The polydipsic diabetes insipidus is an acquired condition. Mostly it is idiopathic. Sometimes it can be due to chronic meningitis, granulomatous diseases, multiple sclerosis or other diffuse pathology of the brain, or it may be associated with compulsive water drinking, which is a psychiatric illness. CWD or compulsive water drinking is also called PPD, that is polydipsia, psychogenic polydipsia or PPD. CWD is compulsive water drinking, psychogenic polydipsia or PPD mean one and the same. It is due to an underlying depression and psychiatric illness. Patient will be taking more and more fluids during the course of the day, with the result, so the plasma gets diluted and the osmolality falls and then the lot of polyuria occurs. Because the high fluid in the body suppresses the ADH secretion from the posterior pituitary. Of course, the last category is the gestogenic diabetes insipidus due to placental enzymes called the vasopressinases. This is a rare condition. Nonetheless, it can be kept in mind in any pregnant woman who is not a diabetic but is having severe polyuria. Before we go on to the etiological diagnosis of a polyuria case, it is important for us to establish that what the patient is having is really polyuria. The best way to determine this is to do a 24-hour urine collection. So, patient should be asked to collect urine for a period of 24 hours starting from 7 a.m. of one morning to the next morning 7 a.m. in a clean 5-liter plastic container, to which we add 10 ml of acetic acid as preservative. So, that keeps the urine intact without any degradation. So, add 10 ml of acetic acid into a 5-liter plastic container. The moment the patient gets up in the morning, he discards the early morning urine, because that urine is the previous day's urine in the bladder. So, the first urine is discarded. From then onwards, whatever spontaneous urinations occur, the patients will be collecting in the can that is provided to them for the next 24 hours exactly until the next morning, and he will include the early morning specimen of the next day in the collection, because that is part of this 24 hours. Remember to advise the patient to do the 24-hour collection on a day when they are not going out for work, on a day when they are freely available at home. This will facilitate them to do the collection correctly. Otherwise, it is very cumbersome for the patient to carry the can along with him wherever he goes to the work or marketplace and start collecting urine. Whenever he goes to the bathroom, go with the can. It is very embarrassing. So, this is a very important practical point. And to define polyuria, the urine output over 24-hour period should be more than 40 milliliters per kilogram, more than 40 ml per kilogram. That means if the patient is weighing 60 kilograms, any urine output of more than 2.4 liters, 40 into 60 is 2.4 liters, is polyuria. So, take the patient's weight and see whether the definition of polyuria is satisfied or not. Then the next step would be to do the urine osmolality, and the urine osmolality, if it is less than 300 milliosmoles per kilogram of water, it suggests that the urine is dilute. That means the patient is having polyuria and a dilute urine, which requires further investigation for the cause of polyuria, particularly diabetes insipidus of different types. Normally what we measure is specific gravity. Any specific gravity of less than 1.010 is a dilute urine, but it is better to measure the urine osmolality rather than specific gravity. Polydipsia, as I have already told you, is water intake of more than 100 ml per kilogram of body weight. The patient is weighing 60 kilograms. Any water intake of more than 6 liters per day is polydipsia. And along with urine osmolality and urine volume and fluid intake for 24 hours, we have to also measure the plasma sodium. From then on, we will know how to go about the algorithm of etiological diagnosis of polyuria. These are the following tests that we do in a case of polyuria. 24-hour urine volume measurement, more than 3 liters, suggestive of polyuria. If the patient is having central diabetes insipidus, 1 can of 5 liters may not be sufficient. He may have to use another can to collect what is in excess of the 5 liters. And then the urine output of 6 liters or more is suggestive of central diabetes insipidus, lithium toxicity, or primary polydipsic diabetes insipidus, or PPD, or psychogenic polydipsia. Urine analysis for UTI and glycosuria must be conducted in all cases to know whether it is due to urinary tract infection or due to diabetes. Serum sodium will be low in a case of polydipsic polyuria, whereas in diabetes insipidus the serum sodium will be high. Diagnosis of diabetes insipidus is made by completely restricting free water intake, then measuring the urine volume and urine osmolality and plasma osmolality and serum sodium and serum osmolality. So, with these tests we can formulate an algorithm for the diagnosis of polyuria, which we will be seeing in the next few slides. So, once we suspect a case of polyuria and establish that it is polyuria, then if we think that we need to test for diabetes insipidus, then the measurement of urine osmolality on a spot sample. After that, an injection of DDAVP is given 1 to 3 micrograms subcutaneously depending on the body weight, and again measure the urine osmolality 1 to 2 hours later or of the next spontaneously voided sample. If the urine osmolality raises by more than 50%, so that means let us say if the initial urine osmolality is 250, and if it rises by more than 50%, that is another 125, then it confirms that it is central diabetes insipidus. But if the urine osmolality raises, but not by that much, but only less than 50% increase, then we are dealing with a case of nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. Plasma sodium is normal and urine osmolality is below 300 milligrams, then we need to do a water deprivation test. So, these are in a way different tests that we do in a case of polyuria, but the best methodology would be to follow the algorithm that is presented in the next few slides, so that we clearly arrive at a particular diagnosis for the case of polyuria.